Good morning. So this is the day 4 question. What sensations or emotions do I habitually interpret as personal meaning without first examining their physiological or contextual origins? What sensations or emotions do I habitually interpret as personal meaning without first examining their physiological or contextual origins? I've been reading these in weird inflections that make me go, what? Okay, it's basically trying to say meaning. So, what sensations or emotions do I habitually interpret as personal meaning without first examining their physiological or contextual origins? Okay, I'll be right back. I don't know why I said I'll be right back. I don't always need to pause to contemplate these. In fact, I want to get more and more to the point where things are just coming to me really quickly. But this is what sensations or emotions do I habitually interpret as personal. So I think sensations is an interesting one because that in the body feels very personal a lot of times. My own example for that is when I first started going through menopause, the symptoms of perimenopause, and now I'm 10 years postmenopausal, which is crazy to me that it's been so long because I was just 38 like the other day. Now I'm 48. So anyway, and I started perimenopause in my late 20s, early 30s. So I started fairly young. And so I remember being that young and not so self-aware yet. Still working on that. So everything I felt like very personal, especially because no one in my sphere was seemingly going through anything similar because I was so young when I started. And it felt like anxiety. And now I see like hot flashes are, and all those hormonal fluctuations. I think I was very moody and thinking it was my personality. I think I was very uh like highs and lows uh without, and that's when no one was talking about perimenopause. I hadn't even heard the word till my doctor said that's what was likely happening with me when I went to see her, and when I was like 29. And she's like, well, it's not, what did she say, it's not unheard of, but it is kind of uncommon, to be that age. So I was like, great. What do I do now? No, like no one was talking about it then. That would have been in the early in the 2000s, whenever that was, the late mid 2000s. So anyway, so yeah, those types of bodily sensations felt very personal because I was like, God, I'm on this like roller coaster of hormonal fluctuations that now in hindsight I was like, damn, that would have been nice to put it in the context so it wouldn't take those things so personally. It could be like, I understand what's happening. I can roll with this. Something about understanding what's happening, having context for things. I think, doesn't this use the word? Yeah, it says contextual. So it's related. Having context for sensation really helps me. And I think I said this in another video, like just knowing how something came about. For some reason, I don't know if this is for everybody, but for me, I feel like it helps me understand it in a different way where it doesn't feel so personal, especially if I'm like, oh, this happens to everybody, but just at different times. Okay, got it. So that I felt very personal about that. And then the emotions, well, related to menopause, the hormonal fluctuations. Yeah, it was a very emotional time before I realized what was happening and started meditating and being able to ride the waves easier and easier over time. And now I just feel it rising up because I still have hot flashes like all day long, every day. And I feel it rising up and I know it's coming. So I'll just take a deep breath. Nowadays, I don't even like take off my extra layer I'm wearing. I'm like, I'm just gonna get cold in 5 minutes, so just sweat it out. So yeah, I've learned to roll with the menopausal stuff. Now, outside of menopause, I feel like when I used to get triggered a lot by like relationships or like, like interpersonal things, that all felt very, very personal because I mean, and that's before I understood what trigger, that's before we were even using that word. And before I understood what that was, like that something in me was being reflected and I didn't like it. It was all about the other person, and that felt very personal that they were doing that to me. I felt maybe I was more in that victim, like taking things personally that were being said without looking inside, but treating it as some like, oh, like that was harmful to me, you know. And so I didn't have the context then, because it says without first examining their physiological or contextual origins. So the context for those times thinking back when I was always feeling hurt in the relationship or unseen or unappreciated or disrespected or any of those things that are all about what's not healed in me, what's not been given voice in me. And that's before I think the real start of building context around those things was when I first started doing my own boundary work, because I was like, boundaries, what? We weren't talking about that either. Man, that's why I feel like the 2000s were dark times. We weren't talking about things yet. I really appreciate that about the 2020s. We're talking about things, and I feel like that's the context we've been missing so much through the early part of the internet. Is like, yay, we're rushing out to connect, but we're still not talking about things. We're aware of each other's presence now. That's good. That builds awareness to like, oh, there are other types of people in the world. Oh, but seeing differences. And now we're talking about the internal lived experience differences, the interoception, the difference in from the insides, our experience of being. And I feel like that context is everything. It makes me personally, I'll just speak for me, not feel crazy, not feel highly emotional, not feel like, oh my god, it makes me feel not dysregulated, when there's some like collective sigh of relief when, and it's not, I wouldn't use the word commiserating or shared suffering or anything like that in the negative sense. I think it's more like when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're like, oh my god, me too, I don't feel crazy, that's amazing. It's like a relief. Not that the other person might also be suffering in the same way, because that's not cool. But it's like, oh, yay. We can have these, we've just brought awareness for each other that, hey, me too. It's like that whole Me Too movement, but, in a different way. So context, especially in the interpersonal, to me, brings that shared sense that we're not alone, and that what I'm going through makes more sense in a larger context versus like my limited own experience and trying to hide it away because it feels so different, like it's a shame thing, and I'm just so glad we're talking about things now so that we can stop shaming ourselves for feeling so different when we're actually not all that different. But I also say we are completely unique. I wonder if that's a good way to say it. We're not all so different. We're just completely unique. It's like paradox, but there's a subtle nuance there that I think that points to like a deeper truth. So anyway, that's what came up for me. I'm just looking at the question to see if there's anything else there. What sensations or emotions do I habitually interpret as personal without first examining their physiological or contextual? So I wonder if there's a specific emotion. I just talked about it more in a general sense. Hold on, I do want to think on this a moment. Okay, I had to get a throat lozenge too. The one that came to me is, I think I talked about a little bit kind of about this in I think it was the tarot combo reading yesterday, and it was about in my family line how been conditioned to derive our sense of self-worth and self-value from productivity and workership, like being a human doer versus a human being, human doing versus a human being. And so that's always been praised and valued. And then also, weirdly enough, I didn't say this yesterday because I was just thinking about it. Strangely enough, also being shamed for overworking. Like, oh, you do too much. You were like, there was like mixed messages in it. So, so to me, I'm still confused by it, but now I have more context. Like before, I felt very personal, like an attack. First of all, the conditioning was since birth, on both sides of lines in my family. There's this conditioning of like working, like work ethic. And you hear work ethic especially where I'm from in the Midwest. And one time, I have to tell you, I maybe shared this before. When I went out to Los Angeles, I was like 18, so I was very young. And I was interviewing for a job as a technical recruiter. And that was in the early days of the internet. And somehow, I had worked in HR before, so they saw that I had that experience, and they saw that I worked in the Midwest. I'm from, the Midwest. And the hiring manager was like, it was almost like, no need to go any further with this interview. You're from the Midwest. You have a good work ethic. Like, he told me that. He barely met me. And he's like, you're hired. Because I have a good work ethic, because I am from where I am from. And in the apparently stark contrast with candidates who were from other places, especially California, I guess, where I was. So I was like, interesting. It's like bred into us here, I think, because I'm not alone. I talk to so many people that are from this area, obviously, that's just in us, not everybody, but, a big chunk of us. So I'm not saying it's not in other places. It's just, it happens here. So that, the feeling or the emotion that stirs up in me, even now I have context, though, that's something I don't have to receive that. I don't have to. And before I recognized that, I was like, that I don't have to receive what you're putting on me from your own projections. Like I'm talking, hey mom, hey dad. They don't watch these. But if they did, it would be okay. They know, you know what you did my whole life. And they like those projections, that's more about them than me. That's one whole, I'm so grateful for that learning over the years of doing the inner work of like, wait a minute, that was all them. That was put on them. And then that was put on their parents. That was put on their grandparents. Like, so it's conditioning when that happens. And I'm like, wait, I don't have to receive your shaming. The shaming wasn't toward us, but from a young age, you hear the language of like, well, they need to get a job and they are lazy when talking about other people outside the family. So then that conditions us to fit in that like not lazy category, right? Lazy or not, not doing work that seems like of value, whatever that means. And that goes from like it was valued to do manual labor and it was valued to do office labor. It wasn't white collar, blue collar. That didn't even factor into it. But it was like, do you have a 9 to 5 and are you living by the rules of that, And so it did feel very narrow in those terms, especially given today where work takes many forms and you work from home and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, but then there also came the shaming, which is still today. This comes out of my mom's mouth to me just yesterday or the other day. Like this whole, and it comes in the form of a joke where the laugh is like cringy. And of like shaming for overdoing it and shaming for being lazy because now, there's just so much shaming around that. And I'm like, where's this coming from? And I feel now more compassion, but the emotion before was like hurt. It was, wait, you don't know me. It felt like being unseen and unknown because I do work crazy hard. I'm trying to overcome cheese, but it's true. I try to overcome workaholism. I'm doing better these days, but that because of the conditioning and trying to undo years of that, and so there's still shaming from both angles: overworking and also not having a job now that conforms to the 9 to 5. So it's like, even though, yeah, it's so weird. I'm still so the emotion I feel now is somewhat confusion when it happens versus hurt. Like because the analytical part of me is like, where is this coming from? And how can I help her? Now it's just my mom because my dad's retired. So he's living the good life of like not overworking for once in his life. But he did the shaming thing to all the kids for years of like, gotta work hard, get your hands dirty. But now it's just my mom. So now there's confusion. Like, I just want to figure out, why is this still in her? That almost every conversation, there's something about that. I think maybe the context for it is she spent 38 years in an office job and she's now 10 years into retirement doing nothing. And maybe looking back at her life going, man, what was all that for? So that, at least me going into that analytical space, gives me some compassion for that. And that helps decrease the emotion rising up in me, or at least helps me heal that, like look at what it is in me that would get triggered by it. So I did a lot of that work. Like, well, it was not feeling seen, not feeling understood, feeling shamed for like the sense of value isn't coming from just being, it's coming from doing. So went through a lot of healing around that. Still once in a while it'll come up, but now it's not that deep hurt and triggered feeling. Now it's like a lot of confusion and like wishing it would just stop. Even though I've talked to her about it, it still happens. It's like she forgets and it starts happening again. And I'm just like, what is this? And so then, yeah, so that's, sorry to ramble so long, but that's a big one. I wanted to get a very specific emotion to do this question justice. And that one is a big one for me. What is it for you? What sensation or emotion feels very personal? And then how's that change when we examine the physiological or contextual origins? It's like the context, yeah, it helps me make meaning, understanding, and bring in some compassion. And it does help me, even though it's entirely unnecessary to have context in order to do the inner work of healing and regulating the nervous system, tempering the emotional side. It's unnecessary maybe, but I enjoy having context and meaning. I don't know, maybe it helps me meet people where they're at a little better. Perhaps. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. Bye.